All right, I didn't do mic checks on everybody, so we'll do that as we go through the meeting. How's our feedback?
Oh, mine is, sorry, I forgot about it.
Okay. Oh. Come on in, Commissioner Farnsworth. We have not called the meeting in order just yet. If you've got your phone, you can zoom in. You don't have to zoom in. Are we still getting a feedback? Okay, we've got 4 commissioners. We're missing Commissioner Martin, or is he here? He's here. So we got all the commissioners. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Call this special meeting of October 1st to order. We'll begin with an approval of the agenda as it has been published. Do I hear a motion? I have no changes. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Clark. Does the dais have any questions or comments on the agenda? If not, Dallas, if you put our phone number up. All right, ladies and gentlemen. In tonight's special meeting, we are still doing a hybrid of live and Zoom, which means we've got about a 30-second delay between our live feed and our YouTube feed. We have just called the meeting to order. We have a motion properly seconded on the floor to approve the agenda as it has been published. If you'd like to call in and comment or ask a question to the dais about the agenda, about something you think shouldn't be on the agenda or should be on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. And all you need to do is dial that phone number in front of you. Once we get you into the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address us. We'll make sure that you have the opportunity to do so. All right, Dallas, that's been about 30 seconds.
There are no public comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to the dais. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm on my phone tonight, so I'm going to have a little hard time scrolling back and forth, but I'm just going to call out by name, unmute yourself, and cast your vote. We'll start with Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Norfleet.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, after y'all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I had to take my earpiece out for that. I get confused. Okay. That's going to take us to our one and only item tonight, which is a legislative hearing. And it is the first public hearing of ordinance 2020-26, which is an ordinance for funds to litigate and advertise to educate and inform the electorate. Mike, do you want to give us an intro, or are you ready to just go straight to legal and have them make a presentation?
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't add anything that legal would not.
All right. Do we have Rich with us here tonight? I'm scrolling through my screens, or is it Scott?
You have Rich here and Andrea in the background, not on screen. It would be likely that Scott's going to be able to join us tonight. He's balancing 2 other meetings along with this tonight, so our apologies. But
We understand.
if I can, Mr. Mayor, I'll read the ordinance and then by title, and then just give a brief synopsis of what is in front of the commission tonight. This is ordinance number 2020-26, an ordinance City of Newberry authorizing the use of public funds for purposes of litigating and advertising to educate and inform the electorate of Alachua County's proposed charter referendum, asserting the appropriate legislative findings as to the expenditure of public funds and the benefits accruing to the city therefrom, asserting that such expenditures will serve a proper public purpose, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and establishing an effective date. The appropriate motion would be to adopt the ordinance as read by title only. So obviously this is our first reading of this and was discussed in our meeting earlier this week. This does a couple things. It first basically formalizes the decision that the commission had already made earlier this week to move forward with the filing of a lawsuit. I know that is in the works in our office. At the same time, I think there is some discussions that Scott is having with the attorney from Tallahassee who filed the lawsuit on behalf of the city of Alachua. Since our meeting earlier this week, the city of Alachua has requested an emergency hearing in front of Judge Kime for injunctive relief. I don't know if that hearing has been set at this point, but obviously there's a procedural process in place in Alachua County to get an issue like this heard on an expedited basis. And so the attorneys for Alachua are in the process of going through those hurdles to get the issue heard as quickly as possible. I don't know what conversations Scott and the attorney from Tallahassee have had in terms of the filing of our lawsuit, and of course the city of Archer. I think Scott also informed the commission had just approved a similar piece of litigation to be filed. So we're not exactly sure procedurally how the filing of our lawsuit will impact what's going on with the Alachua lawsuit, but it's a bit of a procedural challenge, I think, for the lawyers to sort of sort through and figure out what the best course of action is. I don't know that I have a good answer for the commission tonight on that, but that is sort of step one. And of course, this ordinance formalizes or ratifies the act of the commission earlier this week on the litigation front. The other purpose of the ordinance is to authorize the expenditures, if necessary, of public funds to educate and inform our electorate as far as what the referendum is. This is slightly modified. We had a draft of this for the commission to discuss earlier this week. Based on some statutory findings and some case law that we've looked at in the interim, we've changed the language a little bit to make it known that what the goal here is to educate and inform the electorate as opposed to advocating to the electorate. There is some case law and a statute that suggests that there is a fine line that's drawn there. And so what we would recommend if the ordinance passes is if the city does want to undertake any type of actions, whether it is spending money to hire a consulting firm or spending money on perhaps generating some signs to post or anything like that, that certainly should run through the city attorney's office for approval before anything is done. There's a couple of legal tests out there that we will be looking at. One is called the magic words test, and the other is called the functional equivalent test. Any type of advertising that the city would undertake in that regard. The magic words test is actually sort of simple. To give you maybe just some examples, anything that says vote for, elect, support, cast your ballot for, vote against, defeat, reject this. Those are magic words, and we would probably try to figure out a different way to convey the message. Again, the focus is informational and educational. And then the functional equivalent test, as you can imagine, is basically taking those words and determining whether some form of verbiage was used, but the result would be the same. So what we really want to do is just inform the public as far as what the referendum seeks to accomplish. And people, the voters, can take away from that or infer from it what they want. But so that's just sort of an overview of what this does here.
Rich, can I break in and ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So what you just have presented to the commission applies to anything that they may spend public tax dollars on to create. It does not apply to their own public comments. It does not apply to if a commissioner wants to make a flyer himself and put it on his own social media page. Does it apply to him or does it not apply to him?
You just nailed the second part of my presentation. So thank you. Yes, the commissioners are able to, on their own, advocate. And, again, I would say, if a commissioner has any question or wants to play it safe, run it through our office, that's perfectly fine. But in terms of a Facebook post or social media or something like that, that is not the use of public funds. So it's a different scenario, and that's the commissioner's own viewpoint. And that's where we were suggesting earlier this week, there's attorney general opinions that speak to that's actually part of the civic function of a commissioner to do that. So that is still okay. So there is definitely a couple of fine lines to be drawn in terms of, in the public funds realm, advocacy versus education, and then in the realm of commissioner versus action taken by the city using public funds. There's that distinction. So you certainly can answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have on it. It may be that as we get deeper into this process, it's sort of an as-needed basis. I think that there will be potentially some things that we'll have to render some opinions on as we get deeper into it, as far as how far can we go versus, what we absolutely shouldn't do.
Rich, I've got one question for you that I don't want you to answer till we get to comments because I didn't prep you with this question. So I'll give you, and I can't remember who you said you got in the office there with you, but at the end of the night, can you advise the commission on behaviors they should particularly avoid when we're in the middle of a lawsuit? This is the first time we've ever been the suing party that I can, since I've been here. We've certainly been engaged in lawsuits in the past 10 years, but does anything change in terms of talking to residents when we're in the lawsuit? Does anything change when we're talking to county commissioners? Are there any, that kind of mentality, anything that we should be particularly concerned of or looking about once we file this suit? And again, you don't need to answer it right now, but if you could give the commission just a little summary, some advice, anything they want to think about, be conscious of while we work through this process, it would be a good time.
Okay, I'll be ready to do that.
Are you ready for questions on the actual ordinance, Rich? Or do you have anything else you want to present?
That's what I have to present. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy.
I'd like to read a couple of the whereases into the record for the public, because I think that they encapsulate what we're doing here. And I'm going to begin with the fourth one. Excuse me. Whereas Article 8, Section 2B of the Florida Constitution provides for home rule, and there's a quote taken right out, municipalities shall have governmental corporate, and proprietary powers to enable them to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and may exercise power for municipal purposes except as otherwise provided by law. Another whereas, hang on, should I unmute Dallas? I'm getting a message. Okay. Another whereas says this amendment as drafted, if implemented, adversely affects the ability of the city to retain the ability to determine appropriate land use for property within its jurisdiction. Another whereas, the amendment as drafted, if implemented, eliminates the ability of municipalities to determine land uses that allows them to chart their unique course of development and differentiate themselves from other local communities. And whereas the amendment as drafted, if implemented, discourages businesses and moving into the community as the city will not have control over local land use policies. I just wanted to highlight those four. The first one directly takes the quote right out of the Florida Constitution that discusses home rule. And those other three, there's about 15 whereases here, but the other three that I read, I think really clearly put what's on the line here. That's at stake. We've already had some residents reach out and wonder about the money that we are considering spending here. But think about that whereas, if this amendment passes, there really be no reason for a business or a person to move into the city of Newberry. We wouldn't be able to protect them. We wouldn't be able to help them grow and prosper. So what we're really talking about here is the future and the heart of Newberry, about whether that's going to be left up to this dais, whoever the community of Newberry puts on this dais, or whether it's going to be left up to a dais in downtown Gainesville that the city of Newberry residents don't necessarily receive equal representation for. So that's what's at stake here in my mind. And that's worth spending a little bit of Newberry taxpayers' dollars to protect that future for them. And that's kind of my stump speech on it. So at that point, I'll open it up to the dais for questions to Rich about the ordinance in front of you. Commissioner Clark. Thank you, sir. Other commissioner questions on the dais? Did we miss a whereas? Seems pretty comprehensive to me. Compliment legal on this. Again,
I did say thank you, but we were on mute.
again, the passage of this ordinance is not the conversation about what we may or may not do when it comes to educating our citizens. This is just going to give us a tool. We have a second reading. If this passes, then the very next item on the agenda will be, what do you want to do with it, if anything at all? If I don't have any comments from the commissioners, Dallas, would you please put our telephone number up? We'll go to the public. Ladies and gentlemen, oh wait, I should ask for a motion before we go to the public. If I don't have any comments, do I hear a motion? Rich has already read it into.
Right, move to approve ordinance number 2020-26 as written.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second by Commissioner Farnsworth. Assuming that there are no questions or comments from the commissioners, we will go directly to public comment. We still have that 30-second delay, so if a commissioner thinks of a question, just jump right in while we're filling that time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our discussion on ordinance 2020-26, which is an ordinance to use public funds for litigation and advertise to educate and inform the electorate. It has been moved and properly seconded to pass, and we will now take public comment on this ordinance. This is the first reading of this ordinance. If you'd like to call in, all you need to do is dial the phone number that you see on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that symbol. That'll let us know that you'd like to address the commission, and we'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. What we're discussing now is the ordinance. So if you have feelings, thoughts on the ordinance now, please let us hear those. And Dallas, that's been about 30 seconds. Do we have anyone with their hand raised?
No, sir.
Okay. Hearing no public comment, we will go for a roll call vote. Start with Commissioner Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin. I think he's just joining. He must have dropped out. Commissioner Martin, we are at a vote and it's up to you. The motion is to pass the ordinance. It was made by Commissioner Coleman and seconded by Commissioner Farnsworth. I'm not exactly sure where you lost your connection. I'm going to go to Commissioner Norfleet while he's getting in.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, I've got 4 ayes. I'd like to chat with Commissioner Martin to make sure that he didn't have any questions. I'm not, Dallas did he drop before we? Okay, Commissioner Martin, can you hear us? Commissioner Martin? Okay, he's having a hard time with his connection. We've got a 4. Rich, give me a little guidance here. I'm not sure.
What I was going to suggest is you, as a little bit of a stall tactic, you asked me a question a few minutes ago, and I'd be happy to answer that question right now. And in the meantime, we may have Commissioner Martin rejoin us. Otherwise, I was going to save it for city attorney.
Yeah, the advice I'm asking from Rich is I'm not sure, in Zoom parliamentary procedures, if the chat is equal to the vote. So I just want to make sure that we do have some opposition. Can
you hear me now?
Okay, we got you. Did you hear the conversation, Commissioner Martin?
I did not. I heard up until basically Rich was finished explaining what the ordinance was, and then you had started talking, and then I kind of lost the connection.
Okay, well, we had some back and forth, not terribly much. And then we had a motion properly seconded for approval. I just want to make sure if you had any questions that you had the opportunity to ask them before we took the vote. And now that we have a connection, I'd actually like to just start over and make sure we do this thing right. So do you have any questions about the ordinance as it was read? You heard the presentation. So the only conversation that you missed was me reminding the commission that the ordinance in front of us has nothing to do with any strategy that we may or may not employ. It gives the commission a tool, and this is the first reading. After the second reading, if it passes, the next agenda item would be, okay, you've got this tool. Do you want to use it? So tonight is just voting on the tool.
All right. So it sounds like it's really just kind of a continuation of Monday's discussion more than anything on a formal basis with a resolution in front of us. And as I had said on Monday night, I'm in favor of the lawsuit. I've offered the motion, but I'm just kind of against the spending of advertising money, but that's a conversation for another day at this point.
Okay. So the motion was made by Commissioner Coleman. Do you make that motion again? It was seconded. Go ahead, make it again. We'll read it into the record.
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-26 as written.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. I'm going to ask for public comment and hold that connection, Commissioner Martin. I'll get your vote first just in case you drop out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're just hit the reset button because I did not realize we had lost a commissioner in the middle of that conversation. So we have a motion properly seconded again on the floor to approve ordinance 2020-26, which is an ordinance to allow the use of public funds for litigation and advertisements to educate and inform the electorate. If you'd like to address the commission on this ordinance, all you need to do is dial a phone number that's on your screen now. Once we get you into the meeting, you'll see a little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. Simply click that, That will let us know that you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. And Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're going to go back for a roll call vote, and we'll start with Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Norfleet,
Aye.
Commissioner Coleman,
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that will bring us to comments. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I have no comments.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, you want to go ahead and address the question I gave you a few minutes ago?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Of course, this is really more directed to the commissioners on an individual basis as they're out in public and at home and potentially being contacted by residents and whatnot. You know, just a few just pieces of advice with respect to being in litigation mode. It's important that we speak consistently. So, you know, what I would recommend in that regard is, I know that Scott had indicated the other day that he was evaluating some legal arguments that are in addition to the lawsuit that the city of Alachua has filed. And so I would suggest, just as a general, that using that as an example, I would, as a general note, we only want to be articulating things to the residents that we are actually doing in terms of claims asserted against the county. And so if we're tossing around a legal theory that you're aware of, but it hasn't actually been pursued, I would just suggest that you probably not comment on something like that. We're also governed by public records here, so just remember, kind of doubly here, anything that you post on social media is potentially a public record. Any texting, anything like that. So, you know, if you're going to save somebody some work by just picking up the phone and having a conversation, you may want to consider that approach. I know that's not always necessarily the best approach or feasible, but that's something to consider. It's also, when I say doubly important, when you're in litigation mode, we have an obligation to preserve documents and in a court of law, which is completely separate and independent from public records obligations. So just remember that anything you're putting in writing, even if it's something that you want to recant, I would actually, in that situation, advise you to, instead of doing that on your own, maybe contacting our office and discussing that. Also want to just generally remind everybody that, you know, one of the common things here is that when you make allegations in a lawsuit, the law basically says that allegations, even if they're potentially frivolous, are not necessarily defamatory. But that does not necessarily mean the same thing if you're speaking outside of the context of a court of law. So just be careful, mindful of comments you might be making, because if it is some sort of statement that's factually based and it's proven to be false at a later time, then that could come back to haunt you. So those are just sort of some words to the wise. And of course, our office is always available to, you know, if you want to run anything through us, you're thinking about doing this, somebody's contacted you, you're not really sure how to respond, just you call our office and let's hit it head on, solution to it.
Okay, thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, do you have any comments?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Martin, you still with us?
Yeah, I had a question. If we are better served by maybe just generating, even potentially from the attorney's office, generating a press release that checks all the boxes, and we can just forward the text of that to any social media that we'd like, or that we would like to read on social media, something that does sort of make it a little bit more consistent, or even just refer back to the actual text of the resolution itself.
I think that's a great idea. Maybe Rich, could you type up a little press release, or maybe we could type up one, shoot it over to legal, just have it checked off. Then we could all share that. All right.
We can do that. We've done that before. That's certainly something we'll maybe we'll circle back with you, Mr. Mayor, and Mike tomorrow on something like that. See if we can come up with some language.
Sounds good. Okay, was that all, Commissioner Martin?
Yes. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Norfleet?
I have none.
Okay, my only comment was, are you prepared, Mike, to give us a little update on the governor's order and what it means for Newberry? Are we still sorting through that?
Mr. Mayor, the one issue that we were still concerned about from the governor's order was whether or not we could continue to have electronic meetings. The governor did release something yesterday extending that through November the 1st. Which is why we're having a hybrid meeting tonight. The commission we're going to discuss with the commission during, I think, the October 12 meeting. We understand that it will not extend beyond November the 1st. So we'll give the commission some alternatives, and then we'll and take what the commission has to say. We may have to draft up some new procedures for how we conduct our meetings is all. In terms of the governor's order itself with respect to bars and restaurants, he opened them to 100% capacity. He did give the ability for local government to be more stringent, but he requires them to have calls if they're going to be more restrictive. And in my understanding of calls is something like documented hospital capacity issues, things of that nature. I don't think that Alachua County intends to be more restrictive. He did not forbid Alachua County or any municipality from having a face mask order. They can have the order. He cannot forbid them from issuing citations for violation of the order, but he did suspend their ability to collect fines and penalties. In regards to that, the commission may remember a meeting or two ago, they directed us to submit to the county the sub-recipient agreement for CARES. City Attorney's Office transmitted a letter to the county. We haven't received a response yet, but it inquired as to whether the governor's prohibition on penalties, would they consider our application at the staff level. If the answer is no, the letter goes further to ask that they submit it to the board for consideration at a meeting. So I think that covers the key elements of what's come out of the governor's office in the last week. But if you have questions, I'll either try to field it, Dallas, who's got some experience, or the city attorney's office.
Thank you for that, Mike. I have no other comments for tonight. So let's open it up for public comment. Dallas, you'll put our phone number up. We'll begin with live public comment here in the chamber.
No comments.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of tonight's special meeting. If you'd like to address the commission on anything, there doesn't have to be anything on the agenda tonight. Now's the appropriate time to do so. All you need to do is dial the phone number that's on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know that you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have an opportunity to do so. We'll wait just a few more seconds to our host at home.
We've got back and forth between Mike's microphone and the room.
Mike, are you on?
Should be.
Okay. And that's been about 30 seconds. Dallas, do we have anybody with their hand raised?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I want to appreciate the commissioners for coming out for this special meeting. I appreciate staff for putting it together. Everybody drive safe and be safe.